Hey friend, before we get back into the episode, I want to offer you something that might deeply support you right now. If you've been feeling stretched thin, if you're carrying that familiar fundraising anxiety, or if you're craving a moment to step out of the pressure and reconnect to yourself, I'd love to invite you into a Brave and Balanced breakthrough session. This is a live one-on-one coaching session tailored specifically to you. As a certified coach and former fundraiser, I work with you beneath the level of surface level mindset tools into the somatic and emotional patterns that shape how you show up, what you believe is possible, and ultimately the results you create. Most fundraisers walk away from this session feeling clearer, steadier, and more able to raise money with ease and freedom. Not because they changed their strategy, but because they got out of their own way and reconnected to their internal source of strength. Right now, this session is $97, and the price will be going up in the coming months. So if you've been thinking, I should do this at some point, let this be your gentle nudge to take action. You can book your session through the link in the show notes, and if something in you feels pulled toward this, trust it. That inner tug is your wisdom speaking. All right, let's get back into the episode. Welcome to the Brave and Balanced Fundraiser, the podcast I wish I'd had during my 15 years as a professional fundraiser. I'm your host, Erin McQuade-Wright. This is your space to breathe, realign, and reconnect with the part of you that chose this work for a reason. Together, we'll explore tools and practices that help you show up less stressed and spread thin, and more grounded, brave, and on purpose. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. This is for my volunteers who've reached out to me and said, I'm a board member, so I'm fundraising in that context. Is there anything that you have that could support me in doing that? This episode is for you. We're going to talk about the internal setting that you should be on as a board member, and your ability to key into what's going on inside of you is a really important asset to keep yourself from being burned out, and what kind of work fundraising is as a board member, how you can go about doing it if you're new. We're going to talk about all that today and unpack it together. So I'm really glad you're here. I had a family member reach out to me the other day and say, I just got asked to be on this board and I'm trying to learn the lay of the land. Can we have a conversation? And I was like, sure. And I asked some questions when we talked. I got some details. One of the things that I always like to know when somebody's thinking about stepping into a role is, what does their fundraising already look like? Sometimes there is a power player who can pick up the phone and ask their contacts who have means, and the money just flows in. And they'll hire development staff and look at them like, why aren't you raising money? I'm over here raising the money and I'm not even the development person. What they might not even realize is that this sort of back channel or maybe old-fashioned fundraising of, I'm just going to call up John and see if he can make a gift, is really at odds with what we're seeing more now, which is a culture of philanthropy across the organization. The person answering the phone at the front desk understands they play a role in a donor's decision to give to the organization. And so just like leadership exists at all levels, right? You don't have to have a C-suite title to be a leader. That's a cultural decision for organizations that believe that you're a leader at all levels. That culture wants you to step into a leadership role and act like a leader and say, okay, I'm going to hold myself like someone who is consequential for this mission because I am. And therefore that affects how I answer the door. It affects how I answer the phone. It affects how I dress. It affects how I hold myself, how I interact with my colleagues, because I know I'm a leader, despite whatever my title is. We're seeing more of a desire to have a culture of philanthropy across some organizations. And so this family member that I was talking to was just asked to join a board that did not have a culture of philanthropy. They had a fairly well-established organization, but as far as I could tell from the one conversation that we had, their idea of fundraising was pretty much events-based. And oof, if that's you, I feel you. I know that that is a thing that sometimes volunteers, board members get excited about. Let's have a party. Let's have an event. Let's invite all our friends. It'll be glitzy. It'll be glamorous. We'll make it the place to be. And, sure, that's a fine thing to do. And people love to turn out for a good cause. But if that is your only fundraising strategy, you're in trouble. So I asked this family member, I was like, okay, so what would your responsibility be as a board member? And they really only talked about this one event. That was all of their fundraising, again, as I recall. But they were being asked to raise sponsorships. And they knew some people who could sponsor, but they were like, how do I do this? Like, how do I go about this? I'm new to this organization. Do I just dive right in with this ambitious ask? And the other unique kind of obstacle for this situation is that the executive director had a very inflated idea of what the sponsorship level should be. This was an organization that at least hadn't had a lot of events. They were new to the event scene if they weren't a new organization altogether. But what they were asking for sponsorship levels was on par with very established events around them. So not knowing the market, the going rate for a sponsorship was something that was a blind spot for them, in my opinion. But what I told my family member is, going back to the old fundraising adage, if you ask for money, you will get advice. And if you ask for advice, you will get money. And I said, you're in a really unique position as a person who's coming onto this board and hasn't been here before, hasn't necessarily cultivated relationships on behalf of this organization. You're in a unique position to say, hey, potential sponsor, I am new to this organization and I just wanted to get your advice about who it is that I should be talking to at your organization about the possibility of your organization sponsoring this event. So it's a very innocent, clean place to come from, right? I just need your advice. Point me in the right direction of the person. And I realized that there are some people in this community who have shared with me that they are looking at fundraising coming from a completely different angle, which is, I signed up to be a volunteer and I'm not really sure how to do it. Do I just go around asking people for money? Or do I have a strategy about it? And they're not always finding that the organizations they work with, the organizations that they serve on the board of, are equipped to help them with fundraising best practices, to know how to go about it. One of the things I remember about being a frontline fundraiser is supplying my volunteers with talking points, with sample emails, with lists of prospects that they were close to or had agreed to reach out to. That level of coordination is really ideal when you've got staff and volunteers working together. But this dear family member of mine was doing it herself. There wasn't really coordinated support from the nonprofit. So she was literally reaching into her contact list and saying, oh, I know that person who works there, and I know that person who works there. She talked about the moment where they were sitting around the board table and the staff member for the organization was saying, we'd like to go to this organization. Does anyone know anyone there? And my family member raised her hand. And then they said, and we'd like this organization. Does anyone know anyone who works there? And the same person raised their hand. And it's like over and over again, it becomes clear that the newest board member at the table has some great potential to be fundraising and to be really effective at it because there are relationships that are already established. The question I naturally ask is, what is the bandwidth of that board member? What is that board member's bandwidth? Because the Pareto rule is 80% of the work will be done by 20% of the people in any group, including board members, including organizations. 80% of the work will be done by 20% of the people. It's the 80-20 rule. But if you have ever been part of that 20%, you know that that can get old really fast. When you are looking around at your fellow board members, you're looking around that table knowing that you are one of or the workhorse on that board. And I'm really interested not only in what the board members' productivity can be here and now, but I'm really interested in what that board member's longevity is like in the nonprofit sector. Are they going to be going gangbusters and burning out 5 years in, 2 years in, and they don't serve on boards anymore? Or is there a way we can bring our volunteers along where they feel like they're really able to deliver for the mission and we're not burning them out by expecting too much of them? And in my opinion, this scenario that my family member was describing is asking too much of them. If there's one person who has all the connections, is excited to do all the outreach, that's not going to end well. And I do think it's on the organization to provide support for that board member, to provide support for not only their staff, but their volunteers in their fundraising. That's what I want to see more of, for us to have a thoughtful conversation about how we can support not only our paid fundraisers, but our volunteer fundraisers as well, so that they can do the work in a smart way rather than in a hard way that allows them to sustain as board members. And maybe they don't sustain on the same organization for years and decades, but that they can be serving as board members in their community, rolling on and rolling off boards, but they're able to keep going. They don't have to have this reactionary sort of cringe that I see too many board members having when they say, oh, boards, and they roll their eyes because they have this feeling of being in a tank with piranhas, of people just taking and taking and taking and taking their time, their connections, their desire to do good, and they feel bled dry. A board member that feels bled dry is not an effective board member to have. So I'm actually not advocating for coddling our board members. I'm not advocating for them, limiting their effectiveness within an organization. I am in favor of everyone being able to understand when they've hit a wall and they're not able to do more, and then communicating that rather than going passive aggressive and complaining about all the boards they serve on and how they're being drained. That's not helpful. Take care of yourself and say when your body tells you you need to stop, stop. Have faith in the people around you to be able to handle that. So I really, just like I want fundraisers to be able to sustain themselves by first listening in to what's happening inside, because nobody else is going to do that for them, right? You got to do that for yourself. I want the same from board members. It might sound like I'm asking too much, but I really want people to be able to regulate their own needs rather than being resentful and lashing out when other people don't anticipate their needs. I hope this conversation has been helpful for all my board members out there who are wanting to do a really great job and needing a little support along the way. I applaud you for serving your community, and I think that's a really important thing to do. So thank you for doing that. I applaud you for serving your community and for looking for ways that you can help. All right, here are your key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, fundraising is a relationship building process, not just asking for donations. Sometimes asking for advice is the most effective step toward future support. Number 2, a culture of philanthropy is everyone's responsibility. Great fundraising organizations engage staff, volunteers, and board members, not just the development office. Number 3, board members need support, not just expectations. Clear strategy, talking points, and coaching help volunteers succeed instead of feeling overwhelmed. Number 4, pay attention to your internal signals. Emotional intelligence means recognizing when you've reached your capacity before resentment and burnout take over. And number 5, the best board members aren't the ones who sacrifice themselves for the mission. They're the ones who learn how to serve generously without abandoning themselves. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.